The selection. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the observation window of Earth's orbital defense station, her reflection ghosting against the backdrop of stars. Below, Earth gleamed like a marble of blue and white, peaceful from this distance, but she knew better. The message from the Xanthak Dominion had arrived 3 hours ago, and with it the weight of another impossible choice. "Commander," Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice cracked slightly as he approached. "They've made their selection." Sarah's fingers tightened on the steel railing. 6 years of these selections had taught her what to expect, but it never got easier. "Show me." The holder screen materialized between them, displaying the profile of a young girl. Maya Wong, age 8. Dark eyes filled with curiosity stared back at Sarah from the image, a slight gap in her front teeth visible in her smile. The biographical data scrolled beside the photo, top of her class in xenobiology, despite her age. Already speaking 3 Earth languages and 2 alien dialects. The kind of mind humanity needed for its future. The kind of mind that Xanthak always seemed to choose. "They say it's random," Rodriguez muttered, his usual military discipline cracking. "But we both know that's a lie." Sarah nodded slowly. The Xanthak's tribute program had been established 20 years ago, when humanity first made contact with the Alien Confederation. 1 child every year, offered to their mysterious guardian in exchange for protection from the cosmic horrors that supposedly lurked in deep space. Humanity had initially refused, of course. The subsequent destruction of Mars Colony had changed many minds. "Where is she now?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. They always followed the same protocol. Her family's compound in New Singapore. They're resisting the selection. Of course they were. Sarah felt a ghost of a smile touch her lips. Humanity might bow, but it never broke. "Get me a secure channel to Dr. Petrov at the Empathy Research Institute, then prepare my shuttle." Rodriguez's eyes widened. "Commander, you're not thinking of." "The Xanthak gave us 72 hours to comply. That's 72 hours to find another way." She turned from the window, her decision made. "And I intend to use every minute." The shuttle ride to New Singapore gave Sarah time to review Dr. Viktor Petrov's latest research. The brilliant but eccentric scientist had been working on breakthrough technology in xenobiological empathy, a way to bridge the gap between human and alien consciousness. The Xanthak had explicitly forbidden such research, claiming it would disturb the natural order. That alone had convinced Sarah it was worth pursuing. The Wong family's compound rose from the rebuilt cityscape like a testament to human resilience. Part traditional architecture, part modern fortress, it represented everything the post-contact world had become, a blend of heritage and harsh necessity. Sarah's shuttle landed on the designated pad, and she was immediately met by Maya's parents, Dr. James Wong, the renowned xenobiologist, and Colonel Lisa Wong of Earth's Defense Force. Their expressions carried equal measures of fear and determination. "Commander Chen," James stepped forward. "We won't let them take her." "I'm not here to take her," Sarah replied, her voice soft but firm. "I'm here to offer an alternative." Lisa's eyes narrowed. "What kind of alternative?" Before Sarah could respond, a small figure appeared in the doorway behind them. Maya Wong stood there, her presence somehow filling the space despite her size. She wore what looked like a handmade replica of an Earth Defense Force uniform, and her eyes held a wisdom far beyond her years. "You're here because of them, aren't you?" Maya's voice was clear, unafraid. "Because of the aliens who want to feed me to their guardian." Sarah knelt down to Maya's level, noting the subtle flinch from both parents. "I'm here because I believe there's more to this situation than the Xanthak have told us, and I think you might be the key to proving it." Maya tilted her head, considering. "Because I can understand them. The alien languages. Not just the languages." Sarah reached into her pocket and withdrew a small device, Dr. Petrov's prototype. It looked like a simple silver circlet, elegant enough to be mistaken for jewelry. Because you might be able to understand their thoughts, their true intentions, if you're willing to try. The parents started to protest, but Maya stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the circlet. Will it hurt? We don't know, Sarah answered honestly. This technology is new, untested, but I believe it's our best chance at understanding why the Xenthak really want our children. And if it doesn't work, James demanded, if the Xenthak discover what we're doing? Sarah stood, facing the parents but keeping Maya in her peripheral vision. Then I take full responsibility. I'll offer myself in Maya's place. A heavy silence fell over the landing pad. In the distance, the sunset painted Singapore's skyline in shades of orange and purple, a reminder of everything humanity stood to lose, and everything it had already survived. Maya reached out and took the circlet from Sarah's hand. I'll do it, she said, her voice steady. Not because I'm afraid, but because I want to know the truth. Sarah saw in that moment why the Xenthak had chosen this child. They might have thought they were selecting the perfect tribute, but instead, they might have just chosen the architect of their own downfall. They had 72 hours until the Xenthak returned for their answer. 72 hours to uncover a truth that had been buried for 20 years. 72 hours to prove that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its ability to submit, but in its power to understand. Maya placed the circlet on her head, and for a moment, Sarah could have sworn she saw it gleam with more than just reflected sunlight. The game was about to change. The decision. Dr. Viktor Petrov's laboratory in the depths of the Empathy Research Institute resembled a cross between a meditation chamber and a quantum computing facility. Holographic displays filled the air with cascading data, while incense burned in carefully placed holders, an eccentricity the scientist claimed helped him think. Maya sat in the center of it all, the silver circlet glowing faintly against her dark hair. Her parents stood nearby, hands clasped together, while Commander Chen and Petrov monitored the readings. Fascinating, Petrov murmured, his accent thickening with excitement. The child's neural patterns, they're already adapting to the interface. I've never seen anything like it. Sarah studied the readouts, remembering her own failed attempts to use the device. Is it safe? Safe, Petrov laughed softly. Commander, we're attempting to bridge the gap between human and alien consciousness. Nothing about this is safe, but he gestured to a particular pattern of waves. She's stable, more than stable, she's thriving. Maya's eyes were closed, her breathing steady. I can feel them, she whispered. Not just the Xenthak, something else, something older. Sarah leaned forward. The Guardian. No, Maya's brow furrowed. Well, yes, but it's not what they told us. It's not what they think it is either. They're afraid of it. Of us. A sudden alarm blared through the facility. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm. Commander, we have a problem. Xenthak vessels just dropped out of hyperspace, 3 hours ahead of schedule. Sarah's mind raced. They must have detected the empathy device activation. Maya, we need tow. Wait. Maya's voice had changed, carrying an echo of something ancient. Let me show you what I see. The holographic displays flickered, then erupted with new data. Images formed in the air around them. Vast stellar nurseries, civilizations rising and falling, and through it all, threads of consciousness spanning the gaps between stars. The Guardian isn't their creature, Maya continued, her voice filled with wonder. It's a part of something bigger, something that connects all sentient life. The Xenthak, they found a way to control a small part of it, to trap it. They use it to control other species, claiming they're protecting us, but really. They're harvesting potential, Petrov breathed, his eyes wide. The children they take, they're not sacrifices, they're conduits. Sarah felt her fists clench. Conduits for what? For this. Maya opened her eyes, and for a moment, they seemed to contain galaxies. For understanding, real understanding, the kind they're afraid we'll achieve on our own. The facility shook as something massive passed overhead. Through the reinforced windows, Sarah caught a glimpse of its Senthac dreadnought, its crystalline surface reflecting Earth's sunlight like a malevolent star. Commander Chen. The voice that filled the laboratory was neither human nor fully alien, a Xanthic overseer, broadcasting directly into their minds. You've violated the terms of our arrangement. Surrender the child and the illegal technology immediately. Sarah looked at Maya, then at her parents, seeing the same resolution in their eyes that she felt in her heart. And if we refuse, then we will demonstrate why your species required our protection in the first place. Maya stood, the circlet pulsing with inner light. They're lying, she said calmly. They don't protect us. They never did. The horrors they claim to guard us from, they're the source of them. Maya, her mother stepped forward. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Maya smiled, and in that smile was every reason humanity had survived this long. Because I can see what they've done to the others, to all the children they took before me. They're not gone. They're waiting. The laboratory systems surged as Maya raised her hands. The empathy device blazed like a miniature sun, and through it, Sarah felt something she'd never experienced before: connection. Not just to Maya or the humans in the room, but to minds across the galaxy, to the very thing that Senthac had tried to control. Impossible, the Overseer's voice trembled. The Guardian cannot. The Guardian has a choice now. Maya replied, her voice carrying the weight of countless others. Just like I do. Just like we all do. Sarah knew in that moment that everything was about to change. That Senthac had spent centuries building their power on controlled connection, on the lie that they alone could protect younger species from the dangers of the cosmos. But they had never encountered anything like humanity, or like Maya. Lieutenant Rodriguez, Sarah called into her comm, initiate Protocol Omega, and get me a direct line to every Earth Defense Force installation. The Senthac aren't the only ones who can make a show of force. Above them, the Dreadnought's weapons began to power up. But Sarah wasn't afraid anymore. The Senthac had made a crucial mistake. They had assumed humanity would always choose safety over understanding, control over connection. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Maya turned to Sarah, her eyes still holding that glimpse of infinity. They're coming, she said. All of them. Every child they took, every consciousness they tried to trap. They felt what we did here. They're waking up. Sarah nodded, a fierce smile spreading across her face. Then let's give them a proper welcome home. The final confrontation was about to begin, and this time, humanity wouldn't stand alone. The Guardian. The Earth's orbital defense grid blazed to life as the Senthac dreadnought loomed over the Empathy Research Institute, but the expected attack never came. Instead, the massive vessel shuddered, its crystalline surface rippling with waves of iridescent light. They're losing control, Maya whispered, her voice carrying echoes of others. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of voices harmonizing with her own. The children they took, they're breaking free. Dr. Petrov's instruments were going haywire, holographic displays flooding with data faster than anyone could process. The neural network is expanding exponentially. Whatever that Senthac were containing, it's not just reaching out to the other children, it's reaching out to everything. Sarah watched as tendrils of ethereal energy began seeping from the dreadnought's hull. They weren't visible to the naked eye, but through the empathy device's interface, they appeared as streams of consciousness, each one carrying memories, emotions, and knowledge from across the galaxy. Commander, Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm. We're getting reports from every Earth defense station. Similar phenomena are occurring at all known Senthac facilities. Their entire network is transforming. Through the laboratory windows, Sarah saw something emerging from the dreadnought. At first, it appeared as merely a distortion in the air, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. But as it descended toward the facility, it took on a more definite form, a being of pure energy and thought, its shape constantly shifting between various representations of life from across the cosmos. Maya stepped forward, seemingly unafraid. That's the Guardian. the real guardian, not what the Xanthak made it pretend to be. The entity passed through the laboratory's walls as if they didn't exist, coming to hover before Maya. In its presence, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of age, of wisdom, and most surprisingly of joy. They found it centuries ago, Maya continued, apparently communicating directly with the entity. An ancient consciousness that spanned the galaxy, connecting all sentient life. They couldn't destroy it, so they tried to control it instead. They used children because we're adaptable, open to new ways of thinking. Dr. Petrov's voice was hushed with awe. They turned a network of universal understanding into a weapon of control. The Guardian's form rippled, and suddenly the laboratory was filled with projections, images of other children, taken from countless worlds over centuries. Each one had been connected to the network, their minds used to help contain and control the Guardian's power. But now, through Maya and the empathy device, they were awakening. The Xanthak's greatest fear, Sarah realized, wasn't that we'd fight them. It was that we'd understand them. Understand everything. A new voice filled the room, not the harsh telepathic broadcast of the Xanthak overseer, but a gentle chorus of minds speaking as one through the Guardian. For millennia, we watched life evolve across the galaxy. We offered connection, understanding, growth. The Xanthak sought to control this gift, to weaponize unity into dominance. But they could not predict what would happen when they chose your child. Maya's parents moved closer to their daughter, but she seemed to be growing stronger, more assured, rather than drained by the connection. Humans are different, she said. We don't just adapt, we transform. We take what we learn and make it into something new. The laboratory systems surged again as more and more minds joined the network. Not just the taken children, but others, scientists, explorers, dreamers from species across the galaxy who had always sensed there was more to reality than that Xanthak permitted them to know. Commander Chen, Rodriguez's voice returned, urgent but excited. The Xanthak fleet, they're retreating. Not just here, everywhere. Reports are coming in from every colony, every outpost. They're falling back to their core systems. But Sarah knew this wasn't over. They won't give up their power easily. They spent too long controlling everything, everyone. No, Maya agreed, her eyes reflecting the Guardian's shifting light. They won't. That's why we're not going to fight them. We're going to free them. The Guardian's form expanded, filling the laboratory with patterns of energy that seemed to represent the very fabric of space-time. Through the empathy device, Sarah began to understand what Maya and the entity were proposing. The Xanthak's control wasn't just over other species, it was over their own people too. Generations of them had been raised to believe in their supremacy, their duty to protect the galaxy by controlling it. The network doesn't just connect us to the taken children, Maya explained. It connects us to everyone, even them, especially them. They've been linked to it longer than anyone, they just forgot how to listen. Dr. Petrov was frantically recording everything, his earlier scientific detachment replaced by pure wonder. The empathy device, it was never just about communication between species. It's about remembering what we all used to know. Sarah felt it too, a sensation of boundaries dissolving, not just between human and alien minds, but between past and present, between fear and understanding. The Guardian wasn't just a consciousness or a network. It was a reminder of what was possible when life recognized itself in all its forms. Above them, the Xanthak dreadnought's crystalline surface had become a canvas of light and shadow, reflecting the battle taking place within, not a battle of weapons, but of ideas. Of truth against control, of understanding against fear. Maya reached out, taking her parents' hands in one of the most human gestures possible, even as she served as a conduit for something far beyond human comprehension. It's starting, she said. The real change. Are you ready? Sarah looked at the child who had become so much more than a potential sacrifice, at the Guardian that had waited centuries to be truly understood, and at the stars visible through the laboratory windows, stars that suddenly seemed less distant, less alien than ever before. Ready, she replied, knowing that whatever came next would reshape not just humanity's place in the galaxy, but the very meaning of consciousness itself. The revolution wouldn't be won with weapons or wars. It would be won with understanding, one mind at a time. The connection. The next few hours transformed the Empathy Research Institute into the epicenter of a galactic awakening. Through Maya and the Guardian, consciousness after consciousness joined the expanding network. Each connection brought new understanding, new memories, new truths that Xanthak had tried to suppress. Dr. Petrov worked feverishly at his instruments, trying to document what he was witnessing. "It's extraordinary," he muttered, his hands flying over holographic controls. The empathy device isn't just facilitating communication, it's acting as a catalyst for some kind of psychological evolution. Sarah watched as Maya sat cross-legged in the center of the laboratory, the silver circlet now pulsing in rhythm with the waves of energy emanating from the Guardian. Around them, the air itself seemed to breathe with consciousness, thick with the presence of minds, both human and alien. "I can see them all now," Maya said, her voice carrying the weight of countless others. Not just the children who were taken, but everyone who was affected. Parents who lost their young ones. Entire species who forgot their own histories. The Xanthak, they didn't just take individuals. They took memories, knowledge, hope. Through the laboratory windows, the Xanthak dreadnought continued its ethereal display, its crystalline surface, now a kaleidoscope of consciousness made visible. But beyond it, other ships were arriving, vessels of designs Sarah had never seen before, representing species that had long hidden from Xanthak dominion. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice came through the comm, tight with tension. "Commander, we're detecting quantum communications between all the arriving ships. Whatever's happening here, it's spreading faster than light itself." "Of course it is," Dr. Petrov said, eyes fixed on his readings. "Consciousness isn't bound by physical laws. The Xanthak tried to contain it, to force it into their rigid structures, but that was always impossible, like trying to hold back an ocean with a net." The Guardian's form shifted, taking on aspects of every species it had ever encountered. Through the empathy device, Sarah felt a surge of memory, not her own, but a collective remembrance of how things had been before the Xanthak's rise to power. The galaxy had once been a tapestry of connected minds, each species contributing its unique perspective to a greater understanding. "They're trying to resist," Maya said suddenly, her face tightening with concentration. "The Xanthak leadership, they're attempting to shut down the network, to cut off their own people from the connection." Sarah stepped closer to Maya, protective instincts warring with the knowledge that the child before her was now far more than just a young girl. "Can they succeed?" "No," Maya smiled, though her expression held sadness. "Because their people don't want to be cut off anymore. Look." Through the empathy device's enhanced perception, Sarah saw what was happening aboard the dreadnought. Young Xanthak, those who had been raised to become the next generation of overseers, were rejecting their conditioning. The rigid hierarchies of their society were dissolving as they experienced, for the first time, true connection with other minds. "Their children," Dr. Petrov breathed. "They're joining the network willingly." Maya nodded. "They were never separate from it, not really. None of us were. That Xanthak leadership just made everyone forget. But you can't forget forever. Not when the truth is written into the fabric of consciousness itself." The laboratory's instruments suddenly registered a massive surge of energy. The Guardian's form expanded, encompassing the entire facility in its radiance. Through it, Sarah felt the presence of minds from across the galaxy. Scientists, philosophers, dreamers from 1,000 species, all reaching out, all remembering. But with the connection came pain too, the accumulated trauma of centuries of separation, of forced isolation, of children torn from their families in the name of protection. Maya's face showed the strain of channeling so much emotion, so much memory. "They're afraid," she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Not just the Xanthak leadership, but everyone. afraid of what it means to be this connected, this vulnerable, afraid of what will become. Sarah knelt beside her, placing a hand on the child's shoulder. Then show them what humanity has always known, that being vulnerable, being connected, is worth the risk. Maya's parents moved closer, forming a protective circle around their daughter. Through the network, their love and support radiated outward, touching minds across space and time. It was answered by waves of similar emotions from countless others, all the parents who had lost children, all the children who had been taken, all the beings who had yearned for true connection. Dr. Petrov's instruments registered another massive shift. The quantum field is stabilizing, he announced. The network, it's not just connecting minds anymore, it's healing them. Above them, the Xanthak dreadnought's crystalline surface began to pulse with new patterns, not the rigid, controlled formations of before, but organic, flowing designs that spoke of life and growth and change. Similar transformations were happening across the galaxy as the ancient connection reasserted itself. That Xanthak leadership is trying one last thing, Maya said, her voice stronger now, supported by countless others. They're attempting to trigger their fail-safe protocols, to sever their entire species from the network permanently. But even as she spoke, a new consciousness joined the connection, a young Xanthak, one who had been destined to become an overseer. Through them, Sarah felt the moment of choice, the rejection of control in favor of understanding. The revolution wasn't being fought with weapons anymore. It was being won with memories, with emotions, with the simple, overwhelming truth that all consciousness was connected, had always been connected. The Guardian's light pulsed once more, and in that pulse, Sarah felt the future taking shape. Not a future of dominion and control, but one of infinite possibility, of consciousness evolving together across the stars. The connection was complete. Now came the hard part, learning to live with it. The revolution. The stars themselves seemed to pulse with new awareness as the consciousness network expanded beyond anything that Xanthak had ever intended. From the Empathy Research Institute, Sarah watched as ships from across the galaxy continued to arrive, not to fight, but to join in what was quickly becoming the greatest transformation in known history. "We're receiving transmissions from every sector," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, his voice filled with wonder. "Species we didn't even know existed are emerging from hiding. They're all connecting." Maya stood at the center of it all, the silver circlet now resembling a crown of living light. The Guardian's energy flowed through her, but she was no longer straining under its influence. Instead, she had become a willing conductor in a galaxy-wide symphony of consciousness. "The Xanthak leadership has retreated to their ancestral fortress," she announced, her voice carrying harmonics of 1,000 other voices. "They've activated their final protocols. They're trying to trigger a quantum collapse of the entire network." Dr. Petrov's instruments flared with warnings. "They're willing to destroy their own people's consciousness to maintain control," he said, horror creeping into his voice. The backlash could damage the minds of everyone connected to the network. But Sarah saw something in Maya's expression, not fear, but determination. "They don't understand," the child said. "They never did. The network can't be destroyed because it's not something they built. It's what we all are." Through the empathy device, Sarah felt a surge of new presences joining the connection. Young Xanthak were abandoning their posts across the galaxy, choosing to embrace the very thing their leaders feared most, true understanding. With each new mind that joined, the network grew stronger, more resilient. "Look," Maya pointed to the holographic displays showing the Xanthak fortress. "They're not alone anymore." The massive structure, built from the same crystalline material as their ships, was changing. Its rigid geometrical patterns were flowing like water, responding to the collective consciousness of its occupants. The younger generation of Xanthak had begun their own revolution, not with weapons, but with memory and truth. "They're remembering," Maya explained, her eyes reflecting starlight. "Not just their own memories, but the memories of everyone their species has ever touched. Every child taken, every family torn apart, every mind forced into isolation. They're feeling it all. Sarah watched as the fortress transformed, its walls becoming transparent, revealing the drama unfolding within. That Xanthak leadership, those who had maintained control for so long, were surrounded by their own people. But instead of violence, something else was happening. They're sharing, Maya whispered. Everything. All the pain, all the fear, all the loneliness of being cut off from true connection, and all the joy of finally being whole. Through the network, Sarah felt the moment the last resistance broke. That Xanthak leaders, faced with the full weight of their species' collective experience, couldn't maintain their isolation any longer. One by one, they opened themselves to the connection they had feared for so long. The effect rippled across the galaxy. Species that had hidden from the Xanthak for generations emerged from their sanctuary worlds. Children who had been taken, their consciousness trapped in the controlled network, were finally free to return to their families, not just in body, but in mind and memory. The quantum collapse, Dr. Petrov called out, checking his instruments. It's been reversed. The network isn't just stable, it's evolving, creating new patterns of connection we've never seen before. Maya nodded, a smile spreading across her face. Because everyone's contributing now. Every mind, every memory, every way of seeing and thinking and being. Even the Xanthak leadership, especially them. They're sharing everything they know, everything they've learned about consciousness and connection. They're helping us understand how to use it without losing ourselves. The Guardian's form shifted, expanding to encompass the entire facility in its radiance. Through it, Sarah felt the future taking shape, not the rigid control future that Xanthak had planned, but something far more extraordinary. Species that had been separated by fear and misunderstanding were sharing their knowledge, their art, their dreams. Commander, Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice held a note of awe. The Earth defense grid, it's changing. The weapons systems are transforming themselves into something else. Some kind of communication network. Not just Earth's defenses, Maya added. Every weapon, every system of control that Xanthak built, they're all being repurposed, turned into tools for connection instead of isolation. Sarah felt it through the empathy device, the wholesale transformation of an entire galaxy's infrastructure. Centuries of technology designed for dominion were being reformed by the collective will of countless connected minds. The revolution wasn't ending. In many ways, it was just beginning. But it was no longer a revolution of resistance, it had become a revolution of remembrance, of returning to a truth that had been buried but never lost, that consciousness itself was meant to be shared, meant to grow together across the vastness of space. Maya reached out, taking Sarah's hand. Through their connection, Sarah felt the presence of every mind that had joined the network, human, Xanthak, and thousands of species between, each one unique, each one essential, each one finally truly free. The Guardian's light pulsed once more, and in that pulse was a promise. This was only the beginning of what consciousness could become when it was finally allowed to evolve without fear. The liberation. The aftermath of the revolution swept through the galaxy like a wave of awakening. From the Empathy Research Institute, now a nexus of transformed consciousness, Sarah watched as centuries of barriers crumbled. But with liberation came challenges none of them had anticipated. The network is detecting distress, Maya announced, her face creased with concern. Some species, their minds aren't ready for full connection. The shock of complete awareness is overwhelming them. Dr. Petrov's instruments confirmed her observation. It's like trying to pour an ocean into a cup, he explained. Too much, too fast. We need to find a way to moderate the flow of consciousness. The Guardian's form shifted, responding to this new challenge. Through the empathy device, Sarah felt the entity's ancient wisdom merging with human innovation and Xanthak knowledge. The solution wasn't to force connection, but to allow each species to adapt at its own pace. Look at what the children are doing, Maya said, pointing to the holographic displays showing scenes from across the galaxy. The taken children, now freed from their role as unwilling conduits, had become teachers. Each one, understanding the trauma of forced connection, was helping others find their own way to join the network. Some through art, some through science, some through simple presence and patience. They're creating buffers, Dr. Petrov realized, studying the patterns, using their experience to help others adapt gradually. Brilliant. But even as liberation spread, a new crisis emerged. The Xanthak fortress, still transforming under the influence of collective consciousness, began to destabilize. The quantum energies that had maintained their control for so long were becoming chaotic. "The fortress is collapsing," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported urgently. "If it goes, it'll create a quantum cascade that could damage the network across entire sectors." Maya stood, the circlet blazing with renewed purpose. "We need to contain it. Not like the Xanthak contained consciousness, but like consciousness contains itself, through choice, through understanding." Through the network, Sarah felt the response, a surge of voluntary connection as minds across the galaxy joined together. Species that had been enemies under Xanthak rule now united their understanding, sharing knowledge of physics, energy, and the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. The Guardian's form enveloped the fortress, not to control but to support. Through Maya, through the empathy device, through every connected mind, a new kind of structure began to take shape. Not rigid crystal, but flowing, living energy that adapted to the needs of all within it. "They're stabilizing it," Dr. Petrov breathed, watching his instruments. "Not by forcing it into a fixed pattern, but by allowing it to find its own balance." The fortress transformed one final time, becoming something entirely new, a living monument to the power of collective consciousness. Its crystalline walls now pulsed with the combined knowledge of thousands of species, a library of minds freely shared. But the greatest change was happening within the minds themselves. Sarah felt it through the network, the healing of ancient wounds, the restoration of lost memories, the rediscovery of connections that had been severed by fear and control. "The Xanthak children," Maya said softly. "They're asking to help rebuild what their ancestors tried to destroy. Not out of guilt, but out of understanding." Through the empathy device, Sarah witnessed as young Xanthak joined with the children of other species, their combined consciousness creating new ways of sharing knowledge, of growing together. The very abilities that had made them effective tools of control now made them powerful agents of connection. "Commander," Rodriguez's voice held a note of amazement. "The defense grids, all of them, everywhere, they're coming back online. But they're different. They're not weapons anymore. It's like they're alive." The transformed defense systems spread across space like a living network, not to contain or control, but to connect and protect. Each node pulsed with the combined consciousness of all who chose to join, creating a new kind of security based on understanding rather than fear. Maya turned to her parents, who had remained steadfast through her transformation. "It's time," she said, her voice carrying echoes of countless others. "Time to show everyone what we can become when we're truly free." The Guardian's energy surged one final time, and through the network, Sarah felt the beginning of something unprecedented. Species that had been separated by light years of space and centuries of fear were sharing not just thoughts or memories, but possibilities, dreams of what they could become together. The liberation wasn't just from Xanthak control, it was from the limitations of isolated consciousness itself. Each mind that joined the network brought new perspectives, new ways of seeing and being. The galaxy was becoming aware of itself, not as separate species fighting for dominance, but as a living tapestry of interconnected awareness. "Look," Maya whispered, pointing to the stars visible through the laboratory windows. "They're remembering how to dance." And indeed, the ships that had gathered around Earth began to move in perfect harmony, their patterns reflecting the flow of consciousness itself. It was neither chaos nor rigid order, but something new, a dynamic balance born of infinite minds choosing to grow together. The liberation was complete, but it was also just beginning. The real challenge lay ahead, learning to live in a galaxy where consciousness itself had been set free.